Coach, Module 4, the three pillars of defense. And I have to give credit right away to a former mentor of mine, Ron Ecker, a longtime NBA assistant coach, former college coach, ran a great video series on teaching coaches about coaching called Basketball Talk Pro. Still a lot of content out there on YouTube if you want to look it up. But he created this framework, to my knowledge at least. He taught me this framework of the three pillars of defense, and I've really taken it, run with it, and tried to break it down in a way that really applies to my favorite age group of youth basketball players. So we're going to use this as a kickoff point and hopefully give you a good solid foundation of how to think about defense in a lot of different ways. So the three pillars are contain, contest, and rebound. So talking about containing the ball, really stopping a drive, mostly from an individual setting, also as a team, keeping the ball out of the paint. Contesting would be contesting shots, trying to distract, annoy, and be in the way of a shooter every time they shoot to reduce their made field goal percentage and finally create more rebounds, and then cleaning up the whole play by going to get the ball and actually getting that rebound at the end. Simple as that sounds, if you do those three, miracles happen on defense. You actually come out looking pretty good overall. And then phase two here, we're going to talk about connecting defense to offense. So kind of tying the pieces together, what we talked about last week on offense and how our defense ability and how we get the ball on defense affects how we should play on offense, and calibrating our speed, how to play fast and slow to be unpredictable, and how to help your players calibrate to attack at an appropriate speed so they're not out of control and they learn to kind of control the tempo of the game. So the three pillars of defense, the first one is contain. I like to say the three D's of defense dictates direction. So if you're working with players as individuals, if they can get in the mindset of being a dictator, I always talk about my mental image of a dictator is this guy, this king with a scepter that says, "Do what I say, or you shall be beheaded." Or the Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, "You shall not pass," and slam your scepter on the floor, your staff on the floor. That's really what we're looking at as an individual on defense, guarding the ball, trying to get our floor position so that we are telling the ball where it has to go, and then our body position so that we can react and stay in front of that ball, and finally, tying that into where the sneakers meet the floor with our footwork. So let's jump into breaking down each of these. So floor position first is really where the strategy happens. So wanting to think about where the player is positioned, who has the ball, where is the ball coming from when that player catches it, and then where do we want that player to go. So we talked about last week briefly the concept of rip opposite, or driving away from your pass. That's what the offense wants to do. And so, again, Noah LaRoche has really influenced me in the idea of universalizing this on the defensive side to just be the opposite. If the offense wants to drive away from the pass to find space, the defense can universalize that by saying we want to force the ball back toward the pass. And so if that player's on a wing, where a lot of coaches and defenses will say force them baseline, where they have a lot of space and they cause a lot of defensive rotations to happen, get a lot of players out of position, we often get a lot better advantage by forcing the ball toward the middle. If the point guard passes to the wing, forcing that wing to drive back toward the middle often gets them into traffic, cluttered floor, cluttered space where they can't really attack freely. And so if we think about wing position, answering these three questions, our players on the wing, the ball is coming from the top, we want them to go to the middle. We can figure out really how to work through this in a lot of different ways, and you start to build in the layers of footwork and context into strategy. Then your players start to understand what they need to do based on where they're at in the game and where they are on the floor. So we can talk about that as we get onto the court. We can start to walk through some different scenarios. I like to just kind of pick a random spot and then troubleshoot it, think through how we want to work on that. Number 2 is body position. So if you watch the average closeout drill anywhere from, say, third grade through college coaches, everybody teaches it the same way. It's terrible. It's not game applicable. They have players running out toward the ball, chopping their feet, and swinging their arms up like two broomsticks. And really, nobody ever does that in a game. It's a waste of time, in my mind. But that's how everybody's been taught closeouts, and so that's how everybody continues to teach closeouts, really, without thinking of it. I like to think about what coaches ask for as really a contradiction of body mechanics. So they ask for low body and high hands, and if you ever try to do that, it's not really feasible. Your hands being up naturally pulls your torso up and out of the stance that is classically looked at as the best position for defense, and vice versa. If our body is trying to stay low, our hands are naturally going to not be as high as they possibly could. And so my solution is a stick arm, which you'll see in the NBA a lot. Keeping the body low, and I have in my arm, instead of up, I have it straight out at the ball. And it does two things. One, it gives the player space and time to react to a drive by being a full arm's length away from the ball. And two, with the hand at the height of the ball, there's no way for the shooter to go up and shoot without that defender being able to track the ball and bring that hand up with them. And then lastly here is making sure we understand which foot is ready to move. So going back to number 1, if we had a good floor position to force them toward the middle, and say we're guarding a player that's on the left wing from our defensive perspective. We're in the paint with facing away from our basket. We've got a player on the left wing to our left, and the pass is coming from our right to reach them from the point guard. We want them to drive to our right. We need to have our right foot ready to move. So if we close out kind of facing toward half court with our left arm as our stick arm at the ball, really being a wall, not giving them any option to really drive to our left, we're going to create that one-way street, force them toward the middle. We need to have our right foot ready to move, so when they go where we are forcing them to go, and this ties back into strategy, by setting this up, we really can start to anticipate. We're making them go where we want them to. We know where they're going to have to end up going before they know where they're going to go. And so body position and footwork wise, we're able to anticipate a lot better and get our right foot in this scenario ready to move into a slide initially to cut them off. And then really specific footwork, what we call the L step, is really what I've tried to boil this down to for players. It's just the simplification of 2 letters of the alphabet, 2 shapes that we're going to make with our feet, and get really good at those 2. So instead of spending a lot of time sliding in a straight line, maybe at different speeds where most defensive practice is, we work on the transitions from running forward to sliding sideways, from sliding at a back angle to running at a back angle, and changing side to side as necessary with that. So the L step is kind of building onto the scenario we just talked about. We're running out to close out, we're using our stick arm, and we're going from running toward our player to sliding sideways to stay in front of our player as they start to drive. So assuming we charge out there with a pretty aggressive closeout, they're not going to shoot because our stick arm is right at their ball and they know they can't get over us. We expect them to drive in the direction we're forcing them, which is to our right. And so our right foot, we're going to go in a transition. The L step is from running forward onto my left foot to pushing my right foot into my first slide to the side. And then the X step is just really a progression of that. If we slide that first L step in our right foot slide position, and that ball is really taking off fast and starting to get past us, instead of continuing to slide, which is what most players are taught and where most players get beat, is they're running a race with somebody that's running and they are sliding, they're going to lose the race. And I have a nice grid tile court at my gym, and I like to use that as kind of a measuring stick. Most players are moving about 2 or 3 tiles at a time when they slide, and they can often run 5 or 6 tiles in the same one-step stride when they run. And so I like to use that to just highlight and contrast that, where if you slide the whole time, the guy with the ball is running, he's going to outrun you. And so what we work on is intentionally X step. And I like to point out that most coaches are always trying to help players not get tangled up by saying don't cross your feet. And so what they're typically talking about is while sliding, you don't want to cross your ankles over each other because you're going to get tangled up. What we're talking about with the X step is intentionally turning our body and crossing over into a running stride by turning our hips and our toes and eventually our shoulders to follow that. Turning and running to cut off the ball by gaining more distance per step. And typically what I found is it's only necessary to do 1 or 2 steps in that running motion before they can recover back to what we call chest wall position, getting back into a slide with our chest between the ball handler and the basket. So again, another thing that'll make more sense on the court to walk through and see it, hopefully get you coaches trying it yourself in person and make a lot of sense. But I've had really great results with individual players, just giving them this framework and simplifying things. We're forcing the ball back toward the pass. We're not trying to do both hands up and body down with our body position. We're using the stick arm and staying low. And then we are using our L step and our X step to do whatever we need to do to stay in front of the ball. And those 3 tools combined just really works like magic. You get players able to stay in front of just about anybody as a ball handler and be in position for our next pillar, which is contesting. So really the goal of contesting is to annoy and distract the shooter. We don't necessarily need to be blocking the shot. So we're going to talk about targeting. What are we actually trying to contest? Distance, how close do we need to be to actually affect a shooter? And timing, when do we jump? So again, kind of taking this on an individual player basis, if you get all the individual players on your team understanding how to do this, then you're going to have a lot of contested shots and a lot more misses from the other team, which will turn into a lot more rebounds, which we'll get to in a bit. So targeting, what are we contesting? I like to always point out we don't need to contest the line of the ball. We're just contesting the line of sight. So if we get our hand up between the shooter's eyes and the basket at the point when they're shooting and releasing the ball, we're going to have a pretty dramatic impact. If you look at NBA stats, uncontested shots are somewhere in the 70% range of made, and contested shots are somewhere in the 30-35% range. So I like to just take that, assuming quality of offense is matched by quality of defense in the NBA, it usually scales down in most stats to similar but lower numbers in high school and youth level. So I like to just call it half, right? So uncontested shots, whatever that player is going to shoot, you can cut it in half by contesting it, putting a hand in their line of sight every time they shoot. We don't need to block the shot to impact misses, which is tough for players to adjust to. Most players are used to all out trying to block every shot. Even if it's a 3-point catch, they're running out from 20 feet away, they're going to try to block the shot, and they end up fouling the shooter a whole lot. And while they're trying to get there, they're not up in time to actually contest the shooter's vision, so the shooter often makes it and then gets this flying body crashing into them and gets a foul and an and one, or they miss the shot and get 3 free throws. So the stick arm here plays into this as well. We just talked about the body position. If we're closing out or we have our stick arm where we're guarding the man with the ball, we can match the ball all the way up to the point where they release the shot, and we can be pretty sure of having our hand and our arm in their vision. And if we contain the drive outside the paint and contest the shot, we force a pretty bad percentage every time without getting beat or fouling. So what I like to do with practicing this is first make the offensive player just catch and shoot every time, no matter what, and get the defensive player running from a really long closeout. So I'll even put them inside the charge circle in the paint and make them close out toward a shooter at the three-point line, and just get them working on stopping and jumping upward whenever the ball is shot. So it doesn't matter how far they are. It doesn't matter. Really, the timing is the big thing. We're going to talk about more of that in a sec. But getting them familiar with the idea that the line of sight from the shooter's eyeballs to the rim is a straight line like a laser that they can always reach with their hand, even if they're still maybe at the edge of the paint and not very close to the shooter at all. When they jump, assuming they're similar height to the player they're playing against, they're going to be able to get a hand between that player's eyes and the rim, even though they're very far from being able to touch the ball. And this, again, is a concept from Ron Ecker, where he did a lot of study through college and NBA stats and training his team to really have a big impact by contesting the shooter's vision and making that a really big, important goal for every player on the team. Number 2 is distance. How close do we need to be? So 6 feet is kind of the standard that I've come to. Kind of picture a 6-foot bubble around the shooter. Coincidentally, the same distance as social distancing. But I like to use the rating system. This is what Ron Ecker really developed to rate his players and try to get them measuring their results in a defensive stat that's otherwise kind of ambiguous. 0, 1, or 2 rating system. So what I've arrived at is trying to make this really specific down to measurable distances. 0 would be if the defense player is outside of that 6-foot bubble and makes no effort to put their hand up in the shooter's vision. Right, so they're kind of giving up. And you'll see this at all levels. This happens a lot where, again, the player's perspective is they need to be really close, able to at least be in the vicinity of blocking the shot in order to actually try to contest the shot. And so even at the NBA, the player will be 6 feet away from Steph Curry and he's already up into a shot, and so they give up because they're not 6 feet. They're not close enough to block the shot, and so they see it as no reason to go up with the shot, even though what we've proven over time is it really does have an impact by contesting it. Level 1 would be inside the 6-foot bubble, so we're kind of close enough to bother the shooter, maybe make them hesitate, but we don't have a hand up. Or we're outside of 6 feet, but we're putting a hand up with effort. We're trying to get up in their vision the best we can. And then level 2 is we're inside that 6-foot bubble and we have a hand up. We're making an effort to go really put a hand in their vision and make it a challenge to their shot so that they are legitimately distracted by the fact that you might be actually blocking them, being in their bubble. Number 3 is timing. This one I really have spent more time on in recent years, trying to get our older players as they've progressed. I've worked with a lot of players starting in 6th, 7th, 8th grade as they progress to playing high school basketball especially. This has become more and more important. And I think it can definitely be taught at the younger age groups. I think introducing it early helps give players, again, a specific cue and timing, and kind of give them a framework that they can use to improve on this over time. A lot of it is, athletic coordination and, sense of timing just develops over experience, in my experience. So beginners have a little harder time with this, but being the second jumper really just means we're waiting for the ball, the shooter, to go up with the ball and then go up and meet them. And so, if they're driving into the paint, we're staying down until they're airborne, and then we're going up in the air with them. And again, trying to contest their vision as we go up. And so, just body mechanics wise, the shooter is always going to be a little slower because they have the ball in their hands and they're moving a little differently than the defender. So if we have a stick arm at the height of the ball, we can trace that ball upward with our hand, and we can jump after the shooter is up and still meet them by finding that line of sight. And we get really good at this, and we have some height and length to benefit us. Like, we can become a really good shot blocker, especially near the rim, by using that framework as well. If we are always the second jumper, we're rarely going to get caught in the air and get landing on them with a foul for a fake. We're going to wait till they're in the air and go meet the ball at its peak, or again, bother that shooter by, at a minimum, contesting the line of sight. All right, pillar number 3, rebounding. It's become more of a favorite topic of mine as I see players struggle with it, and see some results by working on a few certain aspects of this. So I guess the first thing here is get the ball. Probably the most contrarian thing I'm going to say is that boxing out is outdated and undertaught. It's kind of the cliche. I wrote a blog series at one point called "The Black Basketball Cliches," and that was one of the first ones. Something that coaches yell, parents will yell from the sideline. Everybody knows it's a thing to do and it's a thing to say. Hardly anybody ever spends any time teaching it, other than push people around and put your body on them. All the stuff that's said, but not really taught specifically enough to make it useful for players. And so the reason I say it's outdated is, my perception of box out is really designed for big, strong players close to the basket, holding each other in position so that they could get the ball. And, modern basketball is played with a lot more space, and, maybe 1 out of 5 of your players is going to be in a position where that's useful. The rest of them are going to be on the perimeter, needing to work on predicting where the ball is going and chasing it down and getting it. So, 1 out of 5 might be holding his man under the rim or out of position and hope the ball drops right on him. And the other 4 are going to be hopefully seeing where the ball is shot from and predicting where it's going and able to chase it down and catch it before the other team. So we're going to talk about some more about that. And then what I call bump and chase, kind of the alternative to boxing out. And finally, how we can transition from anybody getting a rebound into a fast break faster by using what I call a bust out dribble. So, get the ball, like I said, boxing out. It's too slow for 80% of player positions unless you really have a big dominant center that's going to sit on the block and sit in the paint a lot. Most players are never going to get a rebound by holding their opponent out of the way. So I look at it as kind of playing not to lose. They're holding back their opponent out on the perimeter. They're stopping their opponent from getting the ball, but they themselves are not going to get the ball. And then the lack of teaching, like footwork, pivoting, positioning, timing, to actually go get the rebound is greatly lacking. And so, most coaching defaults to yelling boxing out louder and more often, right? And that goes for parents too. Like, everybody's yelling at kids to box out. They know rebounding is important. They know we would benefit a lot by getting the ball back more often or getting the ball more quickly on defense, which is what we're going to focus on today, is defensive rebounding. But kids really aren't taught how to apply that as a guard. Again, boxed out is kind of a holdover from, if you're standing right next to your guy, stationary near the basket, then yes, just step into him and push him a little more out of the way and hope the ball drops in your hands. But again, for 4 out of 5 of your players, that's probably not the case. So, bump and chase is kind of the faster guard-oriented strategy. And I like to say play to win. We're taking the offensive approach. Even if we're on a defensive rebounding situation, we want to be aggressively going for the ball, playing to win, versus trying to not lose by just holding the opponent back. So pursue the ball no matter what. There's a great video actually by Coach Jamie Dixon who talks about the aspect of rebounding of just pursuit, right? It's kind of the 50-50 chance that you're actually going to get the ball, but if you pursue the ball relentlessly every time there is any chance to get it, you are pursuing it, then you come up with a surprising number of rebounds where maybe your opponent or your other players stop short of the last 2 steps of pursuing it, and you actually took those last steps and dove on it and saved the ball and got credit for a rebound and maybe started a fast break that your team used to then score a point that won the game. There's a whole lot of things that tie into getting extra chances by having rebounds. And so pursuing the ball is one of the highest values you can give your players. And again, I think this is where boxing out gets in the way, because that mindset is hold the other player back from the ball instead of go get the ball. And when you change your player's mind about the best thing they can do is pursue the ball, they suddenly come up with a lot more rebounds. And then what I do use, kind of the holdover from boxing out, is the bump portion of this. I like to just use our outside forearm to bump the other player in the chest. So we're trying to have a 90-degree arm and step into that player versus, extending our arm. We're trying to calibrate the player so they're not shoving somebody to the floor here, but they're able to bump them. And outside arm, if you think about the ball coming from one side of the court, let's say a shooter was on the right side of the court from my perspective as defense, I want to use my left arm to bump my opponent that's over here on the left side of the floor. My outside arm closest to him so that I can open up my body when I pivot. I'm going to see the middle of the floor, be able to see the ball and go track where I need to go to chase it down. So the three pieces we're going to work on, specifics for individuals here, is getting that chest bump with our forearm, pivoting toward the middle of the floor, and then to go get the ball. Chase, pursue, whatever words you like to use with your players. Try to find some consistency there. I guess I still am lacking a little consistency here with pursue versus chase. I use both kind of interchangeably. But in my mind, if you get the players doing those three things, they're going to be in pretty good shape. And even for your post player, versus sit and hold in a box out situation, bump that offensive player in the chest and chase down the ball. He's probably going to come up with some more rebounds and be a lot more mobile and agile in getting in the right spot than if he's trying to hold that player down out of the way. And the last part here is bust out dribble. So we can look at stats again. The best opportunity to attack by far, the highest percentage shots you'll ever get are after either a defensive rebound or a steal, what we call a live ball change of possession. And what most teams do is really shoot themselves in the foot. I think everybody knows on a steal, like even players are more intuitive with, when I get a steal, I should go fast, like I should go attack the other end of the floor. But we'll still see players that get a steal and kind of hold it and look around for somebody to hand it to. And, coaching-wise, I think we do players a lot of disservice by saying, hold the ball and give it to a guard. Most of the tall players that are going to get the most rebounds never learn to dribble because they're always told to hold it, give it to a guard, and really kills our attack opportunity, which we're going to talk about more in a second. But if that tall rebounding player is always holding the ball for 2 extra seconds and giving it to somebody else before we start our attack, the defense, the other team, is always getting back and getting more set up in those 2 seconds than they otherwise would be if we could attack immediately. And so getting everyone on your team to understand that attacking fast after a rebound is a great opportunity to score can really lead to a lot of great fast breaks. If you get your biggest, tallest post player able to bust out 1 or 2 dribbles, get to half court before they give it up, we can send everybody else running ahead and have shots and layups happening before the defense is ready to really get set and play good defense. So by not doing this, by holding the ball, by walking it up after a rebound, we're really giving up opportunities to get the highest percentage shots. If you look at one of my favorite metrics is points per shot value, which is simply the number of points scored divided by the number of shots attempted to get those points. So similar to how you would calculate field goal percentage, number of made shots divided by number of attempts, we're dividing points by number of attempts. And so, on a layup, we're often in the 90% range of made shots. It gets higher as you go in the higher age groups. 3-4 boys going wildly down the court fast, they might be in the 25% range on how much they make it. But it's still going to be way higher than what you get against a set defense. You think about an uncontested layup at a fast break. Somebody breaks away after a steal on the perimeter and goes down and takes that uncontested layup, that percentage shot is so high compared to what we get in the half court set offense against set defense. It's not even close. We want to get more of those. And defensive rebounds are nearly the same equivalent as a steal in that it was a live turnover. The other team was expecting the ball to either go in the basket or have another chance to score, so they're caught by surprise. And that element of surprise, going from rebound to fast break instantaneously, is where you can make a dramatic difference with your team's scoring ability and your overall efficiency on offense. Connecting defense to offense. So kind of part 2 of tonight. Trying to calibrate how fast or slow we're going to get down the court and having players understand what that attack speed should look like based on the context of the game. So this is another term, another framework that I have to credit Ron Ecker with. Really blew my mind at first learning this. He's got it broken down into 7 different categories. I've tried to simplify it to only 3. He's really working with a lot of high-level coaches from high school to college to NBA, and I think the more specific stuff makes more sense as you get to those higher levels. But what I try to do is simplify this down and make this applicable to what we're doing with 3rd through 8th grade recreational players. So playing fast and slow, most teams play one speed, right? They kind of brag about we're a fast break team, or we're a set offense team, and they become predictable in that. And they also run into trouble when their chosen speed doesn't fit the situation. And so I like to talk about the 3 speeds of offense, varying and adjusting based on the type of possession. So think about the steal and rebound we just talked about. Live ball change of possession is the best opportunity to fast break because of that element of surprise. The other team is not ready to play defense. They were still in offensive mindset when that steal or rebound happened, and we can absolutely get uncontested shots at the other end by playing fast. Made shot, so the other team scores while we're on defense. After that made shot, we can attempt to fast break. I like to say fast break to half court and then reassess where the defense is. So again, if you think about if we're always doing the same speed, let's say we're a slow, deliberate offense team, if we are always walking it up and running our set offense, we're always going to run it against a set defense. And on the made shot, we might have 2 or 3 out of 10 possessions where the other team made a shot, maybe they celebrated, maybe they had just subbed and somebody was out of position. Whatever happened, there was an opportunity to score and we missed it because we were walking it up and letting them get set and organized. And so if we push the pace to half court and then reassess, all right, there's 5 guys back, I'm going to slow it down and set it up. Or, hey, I've got 4 on 2 right now as I'm crossing half court with the ball in my hands. I'm going to keep pushing the pace and, take it to them and try to get an advantage while we have a numbers advantage. So this one's kind of a variable or a gray area after a made shot. Referee touch. So you can think of any violation after a timeout. Really, anytime there's a dead ball, the referee has to touch it and they have to hand it to your player to then inbound it. All that time spent with the referee touching the ball and getting it inbounded, the defense is going to be set. Right? There's not really a chance to fast break. So, taking the opposite approach team where they're always a fast break team, they're going to go down and crash into a set defense, maybe half the possessions of the game, and end up with a lot of rush shots, a lot of turnovers, probably just unforced errors, probably steals by the other team, because the other team has spent those 5 or 10 seconds getting set on defense, and this quote-unquote fast break team is just running it as if it's still a fast break, and they're just barreling into a set defense that's ready to guard them and really has the advantage. And so by matching our speed in these 3 scenarios, playing fast when it's a steal or rebound, attempting to be fast after a made shot, kind of evaluating on the fly, and then being okay with slow, deliberate offense after it's inbounded by the referee. If we do those three things, we are very unpredictable to the other team. They don't know what cues we're choosing to use that for. Calibrating attack speed. So kind of just translating this to your players, we want to think about matching the situational type of possession. So again, steal or rebound can be one of the first ones you work on. Hey, anytime we get a steal, we are going fast. Anytime we get a rebound, we want the rebounder to bust out the dribble and go. Make that a fast break. It's going to be unpredictable to the defense if you play at three different speeds based on the situation of the game. And by giving players this framework, you can really give them a huge gift of learning to control the tempo of a game. If you guys have coached at all in the rec area, especially 5, 6, 7, 8th grade, one of the most frustrating things you can have is a big lead in a game and players that are playing out of control tempo-wise, right? They are trying to fast break and crashing into a press or a set defense and losing the ball all over the place, and the other team's coming back, and you can't slow them down, even maybe calling a couple timeouts to try and explain and get them to slow down. Their instinct or their jitters take over, and they're trying to play fast and throw up shots. And so really getting them comfortable with this framework allows them to play really fast when the opportunity is there, and then also have them be okay when they recognize that it's a situation to run a deliberate offense. So where some teams, players might be frustrated that we're always running slow, deliberate offense and they don't have a chance to fast break and improvise and create opportunities, this kind of gives them the dividing line. You kind of show them why it's better to do this one way or the other based on the situation, not based on because I said so as a coach, and not based on any other arbitrary reason you could come up with. Like, here is stats to back this up. Here's the math of what we're trying to do. Here is the reason why we're going to play at this speed in this situation. And I think keeping it to 3 speeds or 3, situational cues on how fast they should play is simple enough for just about any player to understand. And when all the team gets on the same page with that, you can really add some rocket fuel to whatever else you're doing on offense. It's going to be amplified by playing at a better speed no matter what you're doing. So, quick summary again, the 3 pillars of defense: containing the ball, contesting the shot, and creating more rebounds to then go get the ball on those rebounds. And then connecting our defense to offense, trying to play fast and slow and calibrate our attack to match the speed of the game, the situation of the game, really how we receive the ball when we change from defense to offense is the cue to tell us how fast we should attack. And again, I like to use the universal principle approach. So by applying these universally again with whatever system you're running for offense and defense specifics, these are things that you can use to help your players perform better within the framework that you're giving them as a specific type of offense or a specific type of defense. All right, what's next? So if you've signed up for this course, you are likely coming to either a coach's workshop or a player clinic, or potentially both, where the workshop you're going to be acting as the player role for the most part. I'm going to bring a sample practice plan that I would run with a 5th, 6th grade team. We're going to walk through our practice play model we started with in Module 1 and kind of break down how that looks over the course of the practice and over each segment. You're going to get to experience the power of tag teach, giving really specific cues to execute really specific skills and have that precision feedback. We're going to talk about the offensive concepts, what we reviewed last week, the big 3 tactical skills of drive and kick, pass and cut, dribble at for our back cut and handoff. And then we're going to spend some time just troubleshooting, get you to kind of experience that, ask some questions, break down stuff, kind of as needed to give you the info you need to hopefully pass this stuff on to your teams this season. And then secondly, we'll be doing a player clinic where you take on the role of the coach. I'll have a practice plan for you. We'll be able to review, when we get to the court a few minutes ahead of actually starting, get you comfortable with what the format's going to be. It'll be very similar to what we did in our workshop with you as a player. And I'm going to be there to kind of facilitate the whole clinic, get you guys to run a basket with a small group, and then be floating, giving you tips, giving you feedback, being there to help as you need it as we go through the practice plan. And then we'll wrap up that night with a Q&A session, and after the players are done, find where there were trouble spots, where stuff didn't make sense, where you found frustration by working with the players, and troubleshoot that a little bit. So again, hopefully setting you up for success and smoothing out some of the wrinkles in what we're trying to get across from my brain to your brain to the player's brain. There's plenty of room for improvement as we go through the 3 layers here. But I really look forward to seeing you on the court and hopefully getting you to the point that you are a confident coach, feeling really prepared in your practices and being able to be relaxed in games, kind of knowing that you've done your work in practice can make games a lot of fun, where players are doing their thing, you're trying to guide them best you can, and you're taking lots of notes of what to work on in the next practice. So if you want to take it to the next level, we have a more intensive course, what we call our Coaching Credibility course, and it's also a certification now. So we'll give you a nice certificate at the end. It says you passed the course and you are a certified play practice coach. It's 12 weeks long. It's intended to prepare you, certify you to be ready for any level competition. So I've had coaches go on to coach high school, coach middle school. You can really take this to whatever next level is for you. You might be able to come work for me someday in the player development side of things. We're always looking for coaches interested in perfecting their craft. The format will be similar to what you saw here with our pre-recorded modules. We will have some live Q&A. We do this quarterly, so a group of 10 to 12 coaches typically will have a Q&A session at least once every other week, sometimes every week based on the number of questions we have. And then you'll have a quiz at the end of each week. And rinse and repeat times 12. At the end of the course, you'll have done 12 quizzes and 12 modules, and hopefully be even better set up for success for your next season. So it's a $497 investment for that, 12 weeks long. And we do offer you to come around the court. If you're in that course, come show up to our sessions, kind of watch how we're operating on the court. If you want to get some more hands-on training, we're always happy to have you join. We have a bonus right now for the months of October and November. We'll be wrapping this up by Black Friday, but if you sign up within 2 weeks of finishing this current course, which is the Confident Coach 4-week course, you'll get a free month of our unlimited group training membership for your player. So I know most of you are moms and dads volunteering to coach your son or daughter's team this year, whether with a rec or with a school team. And so we want to try and give you a bonus, give you a kickback here. If you're going to pursue this to the next level course, we want to give you a whole month of training for your player. That's usually $99 value. We offer 16 different groups throughout the week, every week throughout the year. And your player can come to as many of those as they can in a week's time, with you, of course, acting as their chauffeur and the limitations of your time. So I hope you'll take me up on that. I think if you enjoyed the 4 weeks of this, the 12-week credibility course would really blow your socks off and be a lot of fun to have you progress with that and continue to improve your on-the-court coaching as well. So that's it. Week 4 done. Hope to see you guys on the court and see you in another course someday soon.